Chinese actually don't have a term for aesthetics. Until the May 4th movement in 1919, the foreigners invaded China, and the Chinese want to learn from the foreigners, because they beat them with their guns and powders and stuff like that. So they start looking at Western philosophy, and they have to make up a word for aesthetics, and so they call it 美学. Which is this character in Misha, right? And Misha actually means the study of beauty, or beauty study, right? But they don't have this word before. They don't actually talk about beauty or beautiful things. It's kind of a Western idea. Okay? But by the end of the talk, I hope you realize that their sense of beauty is a little bit different to the sense of beauty that we understand, right? And when you do Feng Shui, you need to keep that in mind. Basically, that is the kind of the aim of this presentation. Aesthetic is important because Feng Shui is classified in the 5 arts, right, as the art of appearance, right? And therefore, the aesthetic appearance of a built environment becomes a very important part of Feng Shui consideration, right? When we say that this space, right, has good Feng Shui, right, we don't mean the skill and study or the practice of Feng Shui. We mean the quality of the environment as we see it, as we observe it. Okay? So when we say, look, this has got good Feng Shui, this has got bad Feng Shui, right, we basically mean this environment is good, this environment is nice, we like it. We don't talk about Feng Shui as meaning we practice in Feng Shui. So you need to understand the subtle difference when we use the term Feng Shui. Okay? Right now, being Western trained, and, working in the art of memory, well, I made up this acronym, SUISY, because it sounds like Swiss, SUISY, like Swiss is the country of quality, they made the best matches in the world. Okay, I make it up to denote the 5 principles that I actually have summarized from my study of the traditional Chinese aesthetics, right, as applied to Feng Shui. It is not an easy topic because Feng Shui can be very subjective, right? When I say something is beautiful, you might say it's ugly. It's very subjective. So I have to put them in an environmental context because we're doing Feng Shui and it got to do with environments. And I will try to show some pictures what I mean to try and explain the idea to you. First idea is simple, right? Now, being simple does not mean, right, it's simplistic or it's minimal. A lot of people mistaken Japanese architecture, minimal architecture, automatically has good Feng Shui. It doesn't mean that, Being simple doesn't mean being minimal, right? Being simple to the Chinese means that the design consideration has reached a final resolution, that you cannot put anything more into it, and as soon as you take away something from it, it destroys the quality. Right? So it reached a state of, the Chinese call it a purity and lucidness, right? And has a hidden elegance. Now, this wording actually comes from Chinese scholars. The first saying was coming from a guy called Zhong Bin, right? And the second saying is coming from a literature written about calligraphies, right? This idea of a hidden elegance, right? So it's not a superficial attempt at being different for different sake. And I just show you these 2 buildings to illustrate my point. Now, this building here is an interface-based development in Singapore, right? By a very famous architect, he's really a big-time architect, right? Or he worked for OMA, right? and designed this building here, right? Which is really special. It looks very different, right? It's according, basing on the Bagua principle. He stacked them up on building blocks, right? So it looks very unusual, very eye-catching, you know. Compare that to Iron Pace building, in Qatar, right? Now, one we say it's simple, right? The other is not so simple, okay? Right, and that's why I'm trying to illustrate this idea. Right, now, they could do a housing project much more simple, much more less expensive, much more trying, less trying. The guy is trying really hard to be something special, to do something special, to something stand out, so he can make it to the magazine, everybody talks about it, and he wins awards. Okay, and he did win some awards, right? Now, Iron Place building just sits there quietly. That's the difference between simple and not simple. Not the Scandinavian architecture is very simple, okay? And it's simple because I have to think about it for a long time to get to the stage where you cannot put anything more in it and you cannot take away anything away from it. That's what I mean by simple, okay? Now, here's two, TV monitors right now. It takes time and thinking and planning to do something simple. Now, this is simple. This is very complicated. Okay? Right? And John G says that when we can forget what a thing should look like, then we can find the way. So when you're doing a design, you start with the basic principles. Don't think about how we look. As architects, we always have this image. We flip a magazine and we say, oh, I want to do one of these buildings. Okay? And then put everything in it. Put everything ideas into. Or I want to do a pyramid. So I do everything looks like a pyramid. Don't do that. Start with nothing. Start with emptiness. Work from the basic principle. Right? And as you work through the process, the design process, right? Then you could find the solution. Okay? So don't have any preconceived idea. Work from the basic principle and continue to refine and refine and refine until the essence of a thing, Chinese call it banxing, the original character, right, is established. Then we can make these things simple and not complicated. Now, you need to understand each one of these concepts clearly, okay? Because at the end of it, I'm going to give you a couple of buildings, or 3 buildings. I'm going to ask you, right, have these buildings got good feng shui? Have they got the five principles? And we can do that. So it's a way for you to, summarize what I'm trying to speak to you about, okay? Now also, true simplicity has qi, has a certain vital quality, right? Not only the vital quality, but has a spirit, and we call it shan qi, qi with spirit, right? And the work of art should come in existence like a work of nature by working with the Tao. Working with the Tao means allowing it to come to its true nature, step by step, slowly. That's a beautiful statue. It's not done by Chinese, done by the Romans, right? The Greeks, and whatever. It's actually come from the Vatican Museum, right? And it's called Sofa. And they actually don't know who the artist is, who the sculpture is. But it's a beautiful piece of sculpture. It's very simple, right? It's got a sort of kind of hidden elegance in it. You're looking at it, it's looking at a person, but this person has a certain beauty, right? And you cannot literally put word to it, but it hits you in the deepest level, at the spiritual level, right? And that's what Chinese say, it's been a work of simplicity. Right, the next concept is universal. Right now, I've actually showed these buildings to you, right, because they're extreme buildings. To be universal is not to be extreme, basically, the Chinese say, because being extreme is alienating. You can't relate it to it, So never try to sell a house with all your knickknacks in it, all your furniture, your stuff, because people cannot put themselves in your house if they want to buy your house, because it's just too many things that are too complicated. Move some of the furniture out, keep the essential things in your house, right? So it's not extreme, so people can relate to it, But in the West, we tend to promote extremeness. Extreme dance, all sorts of things extreme, right? And because in the West, we feel that being extreme makes us feel more alive, right? And people will take us notice more, right? But to the Chinese, that's alienating. Now, being universal can also mean not to be too cultural specific, right? Because when you're too cultural specific, you cannot relate to it, there's three-legged frogs and these money cats and stuff like that. You look at it and you can't have a smile on your face. And I say, so bloody Chinese, I wouldn't see that with one of these in my living room, But you can use the Feng Shui cure, right, in a more universal way. Everybody loves the aquarium. And water means money. Movement of a fish is movement of money. Right, put one of these out, it's much better than one of these. Okay? Because it's not, people cannot associate it. But if you're doing Feng Shui with someone who has read a book on the three-legged frog, okay, and she was one of them, that's different. Because now she can relate to it. It's no longer alienating. Do you understand this? But for 90% of people, right, it's too extreme. Now, a water feature, that's really nice. You can put it in a Chinese home, and you can put it in a Scandinavian room, you can put it in an English room, you can put it in anyone's room, and it still be acceptable. And that's what we mean by universal. Being universal also means that you have exhausted all its meaning, right? And you come to an understanding, right, of what is true and what is false and what's essential. And then Confucius actually says that beauty comes when the false is replaced by the essential. He said that, in 2013 to 38 BC. Right? So what you do is that you look at the original nature. Now this is a very nice building done by Swiss architect Peter Sunter. What he did was he studied the Swiss architecture. Right? He understands the essential elements of Swiss architecture, and then he put it in a modern context and a modern material. That is universal. It's not alienating. You can look at this building and you say, that's a nice building. I can relate to that. Do you understand this? Because he spent much time studying the essential quality, essential character of Swiss architecture, and then he expressed it in a way that everybody can relate to. You don't have to be a Swiss to appreciate this. Now, that's another, really, to me, a beautiful piece. Right. Now, we might not be able to relate it to a cross. Okay? This is also in the Vatican Museum. But we can relate to a cross by someone just simply saying this, doing that. Now, you also got to realize that every time I say the five principles, they're not isolated. They're actually related to each other. So this is not only universal, right, but also simple. Do you understand? It's a very simple way of expressing something aesthetically pleasing. Imaginative. Right? Everybody wants to be imaginative. Okay? Now everybody thinks imaginative meaning creative. It's not exactly the same. Right? Meaning imaginative, right, is to be based on a creativity that's holistic, has a holistic understanding in a given situation. So it's not just being creative for creative sake and not being too literal and leave little room for imagination. Now, this is the Lotus Temple in New Delhi, and this is the Sydney Opera House in Sydney. but wisdom right now. Here, lotus. That's it, a lotus. Right, so here, it can be many things. It can be a lotus, it can be the sail in the water, right? It can cut up fruits, vegetables, on the stand. You can put a lot more things into it, which means that you can relate to it. You got ganjing, Chinese say, mutual resonance. Here, that's it, lotus, so what? It's got no multi-layer, it's just got one layer. Right? Afterwards become boring, And the Chinese associate the creative process like a plane taking off, right? There must be enough speed, there is enough understanding of a situation, of an object, of the thing that you want to create, to reach the spirit level. Not just physical, not just mental, but a spiritual level, right? From a matter to mental to spirit, right? Before the creativity and the inventiveness can happen. It's not just the physical, it's not just psychological, but you have to put all these things together so it take off like a spirit. So when we're doing Feng Shui, when we're doing architecture, when we're doing a painting, right, you need to study, you need to meditate, you need to understand, you need to realize. When that happens, a Chinese say, it's not only got qi, but it got shan. Spirit and qi come together. Now, when I say qi, I don't mean some very stubborn deal. When I say qi, I mean how different things link together, right? Link together, right? So when they link together, they become alive. And when they become alive, it has Xiang Shu. Does that make sense? Okay. Right. Then another example, right? The Louvre period, right? Now it's very, very simple, very, very imaginative, right? But it also has a kind of deeper layer that tells you it's like an image of a heart, right, with the person around it. Can you see that? No. You don't see this when you actually go to the Louvre, but when you look down at the plane, right, Iron Pai put his extension right in the heart point of the building complex, right? So being creative or being imaginative does not mean just being creative with anarchy. It involves being natural, finding what is the true meaning, so you can find the self-us, what it meant to be, right? But we also need methodology to be truly imaginative. The difference between a Chinese way of teaching a child to be creative and a Western way of teaching a child to be creative, right, is different. In the West, when we want to teach a student to be creative, we give them a set of colors and we say, go for it. Okay, so they start up kind of scribbling this and this, that, and you put up and say, oh, this is good, this is bad, this is creative, it's not creative, Okay, you know what in China do? They give a child a brush, right, piece of paper, transparent paper, and say, okay, now you're going to be practicing calligraphy, practice Chinese painting. First, copy the masters first. So I give you the master's calligraphy, and you go slowly copy it. Right? They give you a painting by the master, you slowly copy it. And you copy it and copy it and copy it. After 5, 10 years, right, you understand what the essence is. And then master said, okay, now you finish, you can be creative. That's a difference. Huge difference. And that's why in Finland they have a good education. They don't get you to do homework. They get you to play at school and you go home and be creative. Right. So, because in playing, you actually find the essence. And we play when we practice. But you've got to play and play and play before you really get it. Okay? And you play with the methodology, not just play randomly. Okay, now this is another really beautiful piece of imaginative work, right? This is in a Western song, a guy called Gua Kai Xi, right? He said, passing on the spirit of its reflection in the image is what is meant by imaginative. Passing on the spirit, right, in its image. And this is the 4 paintings of cats by Bada. Bada is a very famous Chinese painter. And look at each one of these cats. Right? They have a certain spirit, they have a certain aliveness, and they all look different. Right? But they bring out the essence and the character of a cat. Now, that is being imaginative. Suggestiveness. Now, suggestiveness is not a quality that we aim for in Chinese aesthetics, right? Being suggestive, right, involving using metaphors from nature and from everyday life. You focus on the meaning behind the language and the image. So you actually look beyond the language and you belong beyond the image, right? A sort of image beyond image. Now, this is the Jewish memorial in Berlin. Right? To me, it's a really suggestive kind of piece of architecture. You look at it and you think of death, think of one, think of people can be buried in these boxes. Right? But it's not just laying in a flat piece. It looks level on the surface, but you have to go down and come up. There's a level change as you go down. So you started with the eye level, and then you disappear. Right? You're in a kind of darkness, in a kind of almost like you walk into the death, being buried, then you come back out again. Right? So you really experience a sense what it is to be dead. In a memorial, I think that's really wonderful. It's done in a very, very clever way, very suggestive way. Okay, now, being suggestive means that you could put things in it. There's room for imagination. Here, I'm trying to explain before, there's room for imagination. Here, there's no room for imagination. It's not, this is actually not being suggestive to the Chinese. We in the West thinking, oh, that suggests a pair of shoes. Okay, that's great, But it's not being suggestive. Here it's being suggestive because it can suggest many things at the same time. Well, what does this work of art mean to you?
Death by electrocution.
Well, actually, in fact, it's really about man and nature, okay? Again, it comes from the Vatican Museum. It's a very, all these famous artists, they give work to the Vatican Museum, right? It asks you the question, does man living in the shadow of nature, or does dying nature will split man into two? Now, to me, that is suggesting many things. And what you say is not wrong, What I'm trying to say was, this is artist's idea, right? But apart from his idea, we can have our own idea. We can make our own suggestions. Now, that is good aesthetics to the Chinese. Because, again, it's about ganin, about mutual resonance. Chinese are good Feng Shui is when we have good ganin, when we can relate to our environment. When the environment and us can mutually resonate. Now, when you look at a work out like that, you start thinking, you start putting your own idea into it now. The more idea you can put in this work of art, the better this work of art is. There's no work of art in that. It's just being clever, being funny. Okay, the last thing is yin-yang harmony, yin-yang balance. I think everybody appreciates that. But in fact, the whole idea of Feng Shui is based on yin-yang balance. You know, when we say Feng Shui, we basically mean active and passive. The yang and the yin, the substantial and substantial aspects of nature. And we try to find a balance, right? So ultimately, good Feng Shui is about finding the balance between yin and yang, right? The Chinese would express this sentiment with saying, 天人合一, right? Man and nature are integral whole. When you look at these courtyard houses, right? The solid and the void, right? The substantial and the insubstantial balance. When you look at a painting like that, the black and white, right? The left and the right, the emptiness, the white with the black, balanced together. Even though you don't understand what it says, right? You feel it, like two things are talking. And one is a little bit different to the other. And you know what the character means? Qing, affection, love. Love, yin and yang, coming together. Yin and yang, talking to each other. Yin and yang, connected to each other. In empty space. That's exactly what we do in Feng Shui. We connect to each other in empty space. And Chinese just threw two bloody strokes. Right? So simple. So simple. Right. Express that sentiment. Yin balance can also happen in the, the light and the dark, the solid and the void and so forth. You can see here, right? The light and dark is balanced. The light and dark is not balanced, right? It's out of balance, so therefore it has sha qi, we say, because we feel uncomfortable. Here, the light and dark is balanced. Here is not. And I notice this time when I come back, I have to put all light control devices right across this building, from top to bottom, to stop the reflection. This is like a focus, like a magnifying glass. It's too yang, it's too bright, it's out of balance. So we need an yin balance to be aesthetically pleasing. Now this is an example, right? So I actually covered all these 5 aspects. I hope you understand what I'm saying, okay? Just go back here, right? Simple, universal, imaginative, suggestiveness, yin and balance. SUISY. Okay? So every time someone asks you, they say, hey, you're a Feng Shui expert. What do you think of this building? What do you think of this piece of IKEA furniture? You know? Should I buy it? Will it bring me luck? You know, you can go to the SUISY Principle. Okay? No, I'm going to give you a bit of test, okay? I'm going to say, no, this is a very aesthetically pleasing building because it's a building in Beijing, right? It's done by American architect. It's an executive clubhouse, right? It's a very pleasing building because it's very simple. It's not like this building. It's very simple, a bit like a Chinese courtyard house. It's universal. I can relate to this. It's nothing extraordinarily esoteric that I can't relate to. Right? It works with nature. Right? It's imaginative. Right? It's got yin-yang difference. Right? So to me, it has good function. Use of water contrasting the mountain. All these things. Being natural, using natural materials, nothing artificial. What about this building? This building is in Sydney, right? It's done by done by Frank Gehry, right, of the deconstructivist finding. Okay. Now I want to ask you what do you think of this? Has it got a Swiss principle? Okay, let's start right now. By the way, the government general is actually the guy who represented Queen in Australia, right? And he said, it's the most beautiful paperback I've ever seen. Okay, now, let's start with this, right? SUISY, okay? Is that simple? It's not simple, right? What's the next one? Universal. Is it universal? Is it universal? Is it universal way of doing a building? No, that's two out of 5 is missing, right? Is it imaginative? Yes, imaginative. Okay, in a way, because it looks like a paper bag. That's quite imaginative. Matter of fact, all the imaginative building, people tend to give a name to it. You know, like the walkie-talkie, right? The onion. Not the onion. The motorcycle's helmet. You know, like it's very imaginative. So it is imaginative. Okay, so it's not so simple. It's not so universal, but it's imaginative. And what's the next one? Is it?
Yes.
It's imaginative, right? Okay. Has it got yin-yang difference? Now, I'll tell you, because you haven't been there, so it's very difficult for you to answer this question. Right? It has a yin-yang difference, because I've been inside. Now, it's really funny, you know. This building is extraordinarily, unusual on the outside. But when you go inside, it's a very straightforward building. Almost to a point of being boring. Right? It's very functional, extremely functional. Right? And it's very workable. It's really good working building. And I interview the people working in there, and they say, yes, they enjoy working in this building. So what this building does on the outside and what's inside is completely different. Yeah. Sometimes it reminds me of an Italian woman. You know, you see some beautiful Italian women, but for some reason, they have to dress up in the most tartish looking outgear. They wear the shortest pants, they put the reddest lipsticks, you know? And you think, why do they need to do that? They're already beautiful. Right now, this building does have yin-yang difference because it looks very unusual on the outside, but it's very conservative inside. So we can say this building is 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5. Not bad. It doesn't really have bad Feng Shui, but it doesn't really have really, really good Feng Shui either. 3 out of 5. That's not too bad. Okay. 1 minute left. Okay, 1 minute question time. Right, what do you think about this building? This planning? It's Michelangelo's Piazza del Campidoglio. I can't pronounce that word. Right, it's in Rome. I'll show the model, show the plan. Now, it's a classic ceiling model. Classic ceiling model. But what he did was that he slightly turned this building in here, in this way in here, right? And he created this walkway up here like that. Okay? And there's another crossways in here. Well, what do you think? Simple, universal, imaginative, suggestive, yin-yang difference? That's supposed to work. But there are some problems. Because I just learned today, right, from a local Italian, and like an architect, and he tells me that this building here has a lot of conflict. Yeah. So therefore now, we could analyze this in detail. I won't be able to do this here, right? But I got a feeling it has to do with this. Have to do with this. But, you know, we have to analyze this. Okay? What about this one? Is it simple? Is it universal?
Yes.
Is it imaginative? It's got yin-yang difference? What's the other one? Has it got that? Very good building. Right. It's really powerful. Absolutely powerful. I went in there and I go, wow. That's so simple. and it's been there for thousands of years. And it's not Chinese. So you don't need a Chinese building to have good feng shui. Okay, that's the final lesson you have to learn. Okay, I summarize this, right? Perhaps these 4 characters by Wang Bei, right, is a good way to express the essential character of Chinese aesthetics. The Chinese are more concerned with the meaning and how that will affect us rather than how the image will look. And that applies to all arts, including feng shui. The quality of our environment, right? To be beautiful and aesthetically pleasing is to be meaningful and not just looking good. There is substance below what we can see on the surface. It not only pleases us physically, but mentally and spiritually as well. In this sense, right, there is a subtle difference between the classical East and the modern West. The classical East and the modern West. Because in the classical West and the classical East, we have a similar idea. But the modern West now is changing, right? And the modern East is also changing. And what I'm trying to say to here, we can learn something from the past by looking at the aesthetic principles passing down by our ancestors. Okay, thank you very much.